CURES is sponsored by Wheeler Health's Better Choice program. More at wheelerhealth.org.
Helping you lead a healthier life. This is CURES.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the CURES Show, where we explore cutting-edge wellness for your mind, body, and spirit from credible sources. And we like to call this Free Therapy Wednesday. That's the time of this taping right now. We're checking in with our good friend, Dr. Laura Saunders, so we can really dive into this issue of teens being under so much pressure to achieve. Thanks for being with us, Dr. Saunders.
Thank you for having me, Kara.
So it really is a thing. I think teens feel it so much earlier. Maybe we did too, but you're saying there's definitely been a culture shift, not in a good way, about the pressure that's put on teens to achieve.
Right. So we're really looking at this from the framework of like achievement pressure. And really what we want to do is help our young people build a healthier path, have a little bit more balance in their lives. Adolescence is just a really tough time. There's so much pressure. Things are ever evolving. There's puberty happening and social pressures and social media. And then adding this achievement pressure to the mix just makes for a ticking time bomb for some young people.
And is this pressure unprecedented? And do you think, does it contribute to the mental health crisis we're seeing with teens?
I think it does. I mean, I think, with information generally comes, well, they say knowledge is power, but sometimes in some ways, I think the more information we have, the more overwhelming it is. So, parents want to do right by their children, and so they feel like they need to push them. And then children think that there's only one very narrow path to success. And if I veer off that path in any way, that means I'm unsuccessful, right? That's kind of black and white thinking. You're either successful or unsuccessful, when there's really kind of a wide range in between there. And to really look at how some of the stress can be cumulative, that it builds up over time.
Yeah, I mean, so it's starting with an early age, it can just build and build, and then that, like a tea kettle going off, could actually cause them to burst in ways of anxiety, depression, even burnout that we're seeing among young people.
Right. We are seeing burnout. I mean, I've actually heard, my own kids say this at times, and they feel the pressure. And I really try to dial that way back. And I think that's sort of one of the overarching messages that I really want to send here, is that some of this pressure is driven by parents. And understandably, I say it all the time, parenting's the hardest job in the world. And to some degree, we measure our success as a parent based on your child's success. So that if your child, quote unquote, veers off that path, then we were not successful as a parent, as opposed to sometimes people just veer off their path, or they have a much wider path that they need to be kind of bouncing back and forth on. So really to keep your own expectations in check as a parent, and not really drive that, high achievement success is the only form of success.
Okay. I know there's a lot of external stressors, the pressure to get into college, the pressure to make the best teams, all that. But let's go through some of them. You say some of the sources that you're really focused on as psychologists are, number one, social pressure. Very different now because of social media, I imagine.
It is very different. So, Common Sense Media has come out with some data and some research, right? And what they're showing is that 44% of teens feel pressure to have like a very active social life, and then to present that active social life on social media. And if you don't have this active social life, that there's something wrong with you, or you're inadequate in some way. And that's a lot of pressure. Remember, so yes, maintaining friendships, that's very important, but there's this added piece of that we have to showcase it to the world, and that just kind of doubles the pressure.
Right. I mean, I've seen there's that pressure for kids to just feel like they're always doing something and at least make themselves, the kids will say, relevant, like posting these good things. I know there's a lot of pressure right now for high school kids because everyone's posting their college commitments. And there are just as many or more kids feeling really upset that maybe they were deferred or rejected. And that's making them feel like they don't have a game plan, which, as you said, part of the problem. Like teens really feel pressure to have, what's your game plan for your future?
Right. So, right. What's your game plan? What are you doing? What's your plan 5 and 10 years from now? Right. I just did a whole bunch of interviews for, actually, we do a lot of training on the campus here at the Institute of Living for, psychology doctoral students and for internships. Right. And one of the things we asked them was, what do you want to do 5 to 10 years from now? Right. That kind of perpetuates that. What's your game plan? You got to be thinking into the future. And that can be really very daunting, especially for teenagers who barely can make it through like the weekend, make it through the week into the weekend. So, that constant pressure that you need to make a decision at 15, 16, 17 years old, even 18 years old about the next 5 to 10 years of your life is a lot of pressure. And so sometimes it's kind of dialing back on that. I certainly want people to work to their potential, which means, you study hard and you do the work that you're supposed to do. You learn those skills because those are skills, and those skills really actually build a lot of grit and perseverance as well, and learning to accept failure. So doing those things on a day-to-day basis helps kind of lay out a game plan for you based on what your interests are and what your skills are.
So you just mentioned, part of it is they're doing an interview to maybe get an internship at a great hospital like Hartford Healthcare, and they're asking that question, what's your game plan, or what do you want to do 5 to 10 years? So the pressure really stems from these external things like academic pressure and GPAs that colleges, God bless you. God bless you. Yeah, we're also talking about the quademic. Everyone's got a respiratory something. Get some water. Okay. But as much as you would say, as parents, we need to take the foot off the gas pedal, and we'll talk about that too. But I think the kids feel like they have to perform because they're going to interviews where they're asking them these questions, because the schools say you need this kind of GPA and this kind of SAT score. So what do you do about the fact that that's sort of what society is demanding?
Yeah, and so that's where we as parents and as caregivers can play the role of a mediator at times, right? I know that college guidance counselors need to help kids, figure out their path forward. Never mind the fact that not all kids should even be going to college. There is a subset of kids that would do much better going into skilled trades or other things. Now, I don't want kids to graduate from high school with zero plan, because then you're just going to work, kind of a dead end retail job that's not going to help you advance. So I'm not saying that everyone has to go to college. We do need skilled trades people. However, it really serves us as caregivers, as parents, as school administrators, school teachers, to help kids find the best path for them, not necessarily having to be the most high achieving and high level of success. I do want people to work up to their potential, but that means sort of digging deeper and really understanding what your potential is.
There's also this pressure, and I see this with my kids when we try to enforce a no phone zone, even at the dinner table, and they're, oh, I just have to get back to so-and-so because, they just texted me. But this idea that you have to be instantly available to everybody who texts you, and I'm sure adults were guilty of this too, but this pressure to be responding right away to all their friends and be in the middle of it always.
Right. Well, us as adults, we've kind of become that way. We weren't that way 20 years ago, right? When your phones weren't, that you didn't really have smartphones, and you didn't have instant access to things. But that's a lot of pressure for young people to feel like, I don't want to ghost someone, that even, responding a half hour later might be ghosting someone. That pressure to respond and get back to people constantly because of the bing or the buzz or the ding or whatever it is, creates this kind of, alarm in your brainstem, like, I've got to respond to this, I've got to do this. So all of these pressures are kind of, as we said, cumulative and additive, and really make it very difficult for our teens to focus on what's important to them and to focus on self-care and the things they need to do to help themselves feel better.
So you said we need to really help them shift the focus to personal growth rather than constant success.
Right. You and I have talked about this in other podcasts before. That personal growth is about what is it that you're interested in? What is it that you're good at? What is it that you are willing to kind of pursue on a secondary level? And again, it could be a skilled trade. It doesn't have to be that everyone's going, going to college, and that even going to college means not necessarily finding the best college, it's finding the college that's the best fit. What are your skills? What, you want to be in a cold weather climate, you want to be in a warm weather climate, you want to be close, within an hour or two from home, you need some space from home. It's really understanding yourself better. And that's part of what that college process is, what is it that you like? What is it that you don't like? What are you good at? What are you not so good at? And that, kind of self-exploration process is really important. So it's not about getting to the best of everything. It's finding things that are the best fit for you.
Interesting. I'm just going to take a little bit of a veer off from this, is that we are also doing another story about so many East Coast kids here wanting to go south, that it's this huge trend. They want to be warm. They see it all on social media. And I guess, I don't know, maybe to an extent it's good to spread your wings, or how much of this is like, what do you think about kids looking on social media and saying, oh, wow, I want that. That's what, we didn't used to do that. We just applied, I don't know, based on other reasons, but they're applying a lot of times based on, oh, that looks fun, or that's interesting. They're much more mobile.
Yeah, they are much more mobile. I do worry a little bit about that, because there actually are huge cultural differences that you have to adjust to. There's the logistics that, generally young people don't think about, which is, if you have a homesick weekend and you're, 6-8 hours away, or you're a flight away, you're not coming back for the weekend. Now, I don't want people coming back every weekend, but, it does really limit options. So again, that's where that knowing yourself, understanding what works well for you and what doesn't work well for you. It's not always, that beautiful picture that you see on Instagram about this college campus. All college campuses have their upsides and downsides. But yes, there is certainly more mobility, but sometimes that comes at a cost. And I really like to try to evaluate what those potential costs may be.
Okay. So also embracing self-care. This is something that I know we need to model. We talk about it a lot on the CURES show, about us as adults being burned out, especially women doing too much. So when you think of self-care for teens, I think a lot of us parents are like, self-care, they sleep in, like everything's done for them. What do they need self-care for? But what do you mean when teens are in this, achievement culture, and how they need to do better self-care?
It's learning what works for you. I mean, there's been scads of research done on the fact that schools start way too early in those early morning classes. There's not a lot of good learning that takes place. Adolescents will do better with the shift in the calendars, and so they sleep a lot, but they're always trying to make up for the lack of sleep. So they're napping more, or they're wanting to sleep, past noon on the weekends, and that just sort of those constant shifts in your sleep-wake cycle. I mean, I've shared that, my son had a close friend in high school who would, do either cross country or track practice end of the day, get home, go to sleep for 3 or 4 hours, get up for 3 or 4 hours, eat at like 2 a.m, go to sleep for 3 or 4 hours. I mean, that kind of schedule really wreaks havoc on your mood, on your energy, on your ability to take in, nutrition on a regular basis. So, so it looks like they're sleeping all the time, but they're just sleeping so irregularly that they're actually not getting good, deep, restful sleep that's allowing their brain to rejuvenate itself and store and encode information in a way that's helpful. So it looks like they're sleeping all the time, but they're not. Yeah. And we know that, nutrition affects energy as well.
Yeah. So we do need to be really mindful that we all need sleep, but teens really need sleep.
They really need sleep. And that's why, when high school start at 7 or 7:15, that's just really too early, because a lot of those kids, again, based on this whole achievement culture, might not have gone to bed till, after 1 o'clock. So they're 1 o'clock. So now they're getting 5-6 hours sleep. And if they have a bus ride in the morning, they're getting even less sleep. But they're not getting the things that help them take care of themselves, to make good decisions, to have decent energy, to keep their moods more stable. So they're not doing the basic things to help themselves.
Right. And not only that, but I guess they might not be getting enough sleep, but they're going into high school in the morning. But just the idea that I guess high schools now, some of them have even gotten rid of lunch hours. I hear a lot of these really top-notch students are choosing to say, no, I'm not going to do a lunch hour. I just want to not, I'm not going to really eat, or maybe I'll shove something in my mouth, but I'm going to take another class or do more work.
So I've worked with a number of young people when I found that out several years ago, and I was honestly appalled about that, because that means that you are just driving yourself so hard that you're not even taking a break for lunch. And I don't care if you're eating a granola bar between classes. That's not a break, right? You need to have breaks. You need to have lunch. Now, lunch is can be a super stressful time for a lot of young people, but because that's where they have to negotiate a lot of social expectations. But that's all learning, right? I mean, so yes, I've heard that as well. I'm deeply disturbed by that trend with young people that just eliminate lunch from their schedule so that they can take more classes, but it gives them zero break, zero social connection during the day, and no downtime.
So we need to shift the goals. You mentioned some ways that we can do that, but another way to reframe the learning is seeing the setbacks and failure experiences as really steps on the way to success, learning opportunities, because a growth mindset is key.
Right. A growth mindset is that kind of openness we are to whatever experiences come our way, instead of this achievement mindset, which is just forward, 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 forward. Right. And so it's finding opportunities. I know it's hard to watch your teens and your young people have failure experiences, to get cut from the team, or to get not a good grade, or to not be invited to an event that they wanted to go to, right? Those are really difficult experiences to watch your child go through, but they are learning experiences. And you learn that, if you're consistently not invited to do something with his friend, and that friend posts things on social media, that's not a person to invest your time and energy in, right? But the only way you're going to learn is the experience of rejection, and then to shift your focus to someone that, maybe is willing to do something with you. So the more we can, have some of these experiences, try out for a team, not sure if you're going to make it, work hard, but then, maybe get cut from the team, that's really hard, and that's very dejecting. But then you say, well, okay, well, I tried this, maybe I didn't work hard enough, but I'm going to work harder next year, right? So how do you take those failure experiences and then turn them into something, right? And really what we want to do underneath all this is build perseverance and grit.
Yeah, because so many times they turn it on themselves, that I'm just not good enough, I was the worst one, everybody's smarter than me, everybody's faster than me, everybody. So what's the script for parents when we're in the middle of trying to help the kids? I know we want to say, no, that's not true, which is not really, in the psychology way, I guess we want to help them learn how to validate the emotions. But when you're going through those things where you're like, oh my gosh, my child's melting down, and it's so hard to see, they just got rejected from college or cut from the team, what do we do?
It is hard, right? It is very, very painful as parents to witness your child's kind of pain or discomfort or rejection in the situation. But it really starts with sort of validating it. Like, you're right, it is hard to not get invited, to not make the team, to not make it into that college that you'd hoped to get into. So you'd start with validating it, and then sometimes you let it sit for a little bit, and then you say, is there anything I can do to help or support you? It's not necessarily jumping in to fix it all the time. Like, I'll call the parent or I'll call the school. I mean, sometimes that's needed, especially if it goes a little farther into and infringes on safety issues. But to let your child sit with it for a little bit, validate how they must be feeling, ask if there's something you can do to help or support them. Very often they say no, they don't actually want your help and support. So allowing that to take place as well. And then just really helping them learn from that. And there's different, we can all have a bad day or two. I don't want someone to have bad, weeks, or certainly not months on end. Then it's a bigger problem that needs to be addressed. But sometimes it is just sitting with that experience and reflecting on it. And then hopefully learning from it.
Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit more about what we can do as parents to model some of this and to really engage in what's called active listening. But I'm going to take a quick break so we can listen to our sponsor.
Struggling with gambling? Wheeler Health's Better Choice program offers personalized support and treatment to help you regain control. Visit WheelerHealth.org to learn more and take the first step towards recovery today.
All right, we're talking about the teen achievement culture, how that is contributing to mental health problems, and what we as parents can do about it. Number one, here with Dr. Laura Saunders, I guess we have to not buy into the achievement culture, which is, I got to get you into the best. Parents are spending so much money and time on college, private college counselors, which, not that you don't need one sometimes, maybe you do, but like just this, oh my gosh, I have to get this done for my kid, or we got to get this. Really not even examining the goals, just like you need to get into one of these top schools, you got to be on this team, you got to be doing this, you got to be doing that. Just the constant you should. How damaging is that?
I think it's actually pretty damaging, right? So it really is it's a reflective exercise for parents on how to take their foot off that gas, to not be driving it. There's a place I see that's like a learning center. And that learning center has cars parked out, picking their kids up that are getting all this extra tutoring in math and science or whatever else. Certainly we want to support our kids, but it's not pushing them all the time. It really is reframing learning as the goal. Right now, I don't want it to be that you just learn and then, I understand that grades are important because grades can be, not always, but can be reflective of what you've learned. But that really it is the learning. And that learning is learning subject matters, but it's also learning about yourself, learning what your interests are, learning what's important to you, learning your values, right? Adolescence is a time for identity development. Who am I? What am I about? What are my values? What's important to me? It's that whole identity development phase. So that's part of the learning that takes place. And so for parents, it's just backing off a little bit on that gas.
Yeah. And, just asking what normal development is. I think when our kids are little, we say, okay, at this age, they're supposed to walk, this age, they're supposed to crawl, this is what then the teeth come in. They get a little older and we start driving the societal expectations like they're little adults, like they're going to lead the crazy lives that unfortunately many of us are leaving. We need to learn how to balance. But talk about teen development and maybe how parents need to understand they're actually not little adults and what's going on with their brain development and how we can support healthier ways.
Right. And really understanding that our teens actually do learn better by doing as opposed to us being told, right? So I can say to a 15-year-old, euphemistically, don't put your hand on the stove, it's hot. But you know what? That 15-year-old's going to need to touch it. They need to touch it to find out it's hot, and then that's how they learn.
Yes, I have one of those.
Yeah, I do too. So, but again, it's that allowance, but it's also opening things up. So I actually don't use the words normal and abnormal because they come off as value judgments.
Okay.
I use the words typical and atypical. So what's typical is really understanding that there's pretty wide range of what's typical, right? In all the different pathways that can happen within typical. Now I do see young people, teens, and young adults that are outside the range of typical and kind of off their developmental trajectory. So that's when we get concerned. But to really, emotionally and mentally open up the range of what is typical, more and more people take a gap year. More and more people, take a medical semester off from college for medical or mental health reasons, right? So it's opening up the range of what's typical. And then, looking at what's atypical and what's off their developmental trajectory and then addressing that, but opening up the range of what's typical and what's, then they're still on their developmental path. They're just doing things a little differently.
And it's really a day-to-day plan, like simply us modeling balance, which means I guess we have to care about that too. But how do we model that so we can really help our kids get off of this achievement roller coaster?
It's refocusing on sort of the here and now, right? I use the example of, working with, these are individuals in their mid-20s who I'm asking, what are you doing what do you want to do 5 to 10 years from now? That's a very different question when you're in your mid to late 20s than it is when you're in your mid-teens. It's really focusing more on the here and now. What do you need to do today to help yourself feel better? What do you, and that could be for work. What schoolwork do you have? What sports practice do you have? What are the things that are important to you? So it's really coming back to what's values driven, and focusing more on the here and now, as opposed to, especially when you're a freshman or sophomore in college. Freshman and sophomore in high school. College actually still seems pretty far away.
Right.
So it's, it's focusing more on, you like this course, therefore you're investing energy in this course, not this course helps you get into this college, right? So it's,
okay.
You see, it's a shift in focus to the here and now.
Yeah. So how do we do that? Obviously, we're raising adults, right? I'll say that to myself sometimes. We're raising adults, so we don't want to rescue too much. We want to jump in. We want them to be self-reliant and confident. So how, we only have about 3 minutes left, but what are some tips to make sure they become self-reliant and have a more confident sense of self?
Best way to build confidence actually is through mistakes and failure experiences. So it is backing off a little bit. And again, I'm not talking about big safety issues, but allowing them to sort some of these things out themselves and not always doing it for them, to really kind of give them that emotional space, and to, pull your foot off that achievement pressure yourself, for your young people, and let them figure out a little bit of their path. And also, as parents, recognizing that just because my child's had some failure experiences or some difficulties doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a bad parent. It could be that we're all learning and growing.
Yeah. So I go back to the failure experiences. Sarah Blakely, who created Spanx, credits her dad for asking every day at the dinner table, what did you fail at today? And so when she got thousands of rejection letters about Spanx, of which every woman probably owns one now, she thought it was really normal to be rejected. So when we're trying to protect our kids from like, oh no, you got to get that A, or you got to get in here, or you got to make that team, or you got to do, we're just trying to help them succeed all the time. It's actually counterintuitive to success, because they have to fail to succeed in our final minute together.
They have to fail to succeed. It's what builds grit and perseverance. And then grit and perseverance, those traits are what creates long-term success. But you need to focus on what you need to do for yourself in the here and now.
Okay. Dr. Laura Saunders, a wealth of information as always. Thank you for helping us kind of get a grip on this achievement culture and figure out more balanced ways to deal with it. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kara.
Feel free to share this with your loved ones, with your teen, with your spouse or partner. You can find the CURES podcast by searching CURES Cures on your favorite platform. We'd love it if you would subscribe and leave us a review. Have a great day, everyone, and be well.